Good morning, guys. Good morning, Celebration Church family. Good to see all of you again. Last time I spoke, I was here on Mother's Day. So today is Father's Day, and I get to be here again. It's just to not make my parents jealous, you know. So, no, I'm just kidding. So last time I was here, something bad happened as well. Just before that, because my grandma from my mother's side passed away recently before Mother's Day. And this time, unfortunately, the brother of the same grandma passed away as well. So I laid him to rest this Tuesday, which was very sad. You know, I was close to him as well, and called him my granddad as well. You know, so it was very sad to say goodbye to him on Tuesday. So hopefully, you know, that was the last of people passing away when I'm speaking here. But even though, you know, this week was a tough week due to some other things as well, I'm still here standing and being arrested. You know, and, you know, that's not because of my own doing, and that's really because of God. You know, I find my rest in Him. And it's also due to this wonderful team that we have here in Celebration Church, because I don't have to really be on them to do things, you know, and I don't have to, they pick up a lot of things for me. So it makes it a lot easier to find that rest and to have rest. So thank you to all of the team members here that work so hard every time. Yeah. You know, I hope all of you are well rested as well. And, you know, being well rested is not just having a good night's sleep. There's many ways that you can be well rested, because you can experience rest in a physical way, but also mentally or spiritually, emotionally, socially. You know, there's a lot of types of rests, so to speak, that we have. So having rest in one area doesn't necessarily mean that we have rest in another area as well, and we are well rested. We could be tired, you know, even though we are rested in one area. But it goes the other way around as well. We can be tired or not rested at all at one area, but still have energy from another area. So there's several things going on there. And allow me to explain it a little bit more. I think a lot of us have experienced having a good night's sleep. And I'm talking about 8 hours of sleep, like solid sleep. You have, you know, you go through all of these phases that we can go through in our sleep, like deep sleep, REM sleep, not the band REM, but the phase of sleep, you know, the type of sleep. And different kind of sleep that we go through that we can nowadays track with our apps, right? So you can really see that you went through all of these types of sleeps. And you went all through them several times even, but when you wake up, you're still tired. Anybody ever had that? A lot of us, yeah. You know, I had that as well, and even for longer periods of times where I had that. And it was so bad that I even went to the doctor for it. I was like, something's wrong with me. You know, I'm tired the whole day. As soon as I wake up, I can go right back to sleep. And I just can fall asleep any time of the day, you know. So something's wrong with me. And he goes, like, the first thing he said, he's like, well, you're probably stressed out about something. And I was like, as far as I know, I'm not, you know. Maybe unconsciously I was thinking about something else, but I didn't know I was doing that. But what he said to me actually is that he figured that I'm well rested in one place, but I'm not rested in another place. So I hope that makes sense when I explain it in this way. I'm going to speak from the subject of rest is peace. And we are going to read from Mark chapter 4, verse 35 through 40. On that day when evening had come, he said to them, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he awoke and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." And the wind ceased. And there was a great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith?" Heavenly Father, I just thank you for this wonderful moment, God, of being together with my family here, God, and just going through your word and trying to learn from what you have to say to us, God. I pray that you speak through me to your Holy Spirit, God, and that everything I say will be according to your kingdom, God, and according to your will. Will you bless this word in Jesus' name? Amen. So about 2 years ago, basically the whole world was forced into rest. And this was the result of something called coronavirus. Do you guys still remember that virus? It seems like a long time ago sometimes because we haven't heard about it for, that often, and luckily so. But at this time, we were forced into a rest because, we weren't allowed to go to work. We weren't allowed to go visit family or to do some kind of sports activity. Most of them we couldn't do, especially if it was indoors. So there was a lot of things happening there. And a couple of things happened to people. And actually, a lot of people, they felt great. And the reason is because they didn't have the stress from work. They didn't have the stress from people's expectations to perform. And those people felt the physically and mentally rested. But then others didn't feel so well rested because they felt lonely because of the isolation. And they felt stressed and depressed even. So they didn't find that mental rest. One of the biggest things that I learned from this time was that rest is super important. And it brought me out of the rat race that I was in, of going to work every time and just keep on working, keep on doing things, just being so busy that I forgot to make time for my family. And it really helped me to take a step back and planning that time with my daughters and planning that time with my wife, and every now and then with friends and family, But it really helped me, and I know that more people felt that way. But what happened now that everything is open again? We go back to that stress mode of being back at work every time, being back at work every day, just keep on working and keep on doing things that keep us busy. We're back into trying to live up the expectations that people have for us. When I look at Jesus, I don't think he was bothered with that. I don't think he was bothered about what people thought of him, what he should do, and he didn't do that, or that he rested when people thought he should be working. Because if you go to Mark 4:36, you see that he left the crowd that was surrounding him. And he went onto the boat with the disciples and told them to go to the other side. Jesus sees that there's work to be done. He sees the crowd and he has compassion for them. We know that. He knows that the people need something. There's a need in those people. And they expect him to do that. They expect him to do all these things to meet their needs. That's the reason that they are following him, or at least one of the reasons that they are following him. They probably heard about all of these things that he could do, and they want to experience it for themselves as well. But he still tells the disciples to go in that boat. And once there, he falls asleep. He's obviously not worried about the things that are going on around him. If he was stressed about that, he wouldn't be able to fall asleep, right? So there's an expectancy that Jesus actually didn't live up to. But does that mean that he didn't find this an urgent matter? Does that mean that he didn't find these people worth his time? No, he recognizes the need of the people, and he might even hear them ask the same question that the disciples just asked him moments later when they said, "Master, teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" Oh, believe me, Jesus cares. But he knew in order to help them, he needed rest. And it shows the human side of Jesus, the human side that we can connect to, that we can relate to. Jesus just needed that physical rest. Now in Matthew 26, we see one of the things that can happen if we don't get enough rest. And we'll get back to this chapter later on. But we see here that Jesus goes to Gethsemane. I have to say how to pronounce it in English. With the disciples, and he asked them to stay awake with him and to pray with him while he goes to the Father. And they fall asleep 3 times. You know, I truly believe that the disciples were willing to stay awake. I don't think they wanted to fall asleep. I don't think they wanted to disappoint Jesus. I think they wanted to stay awake with him, but they obviously just couldn't stay awake. They were so tired that the body just said, "Hey, you need this shut-eye. You need to sleep." You know, especially falling asleep the first time and Jesus coming back, you're like, "Oh, man, I disappointed Jesus." You would think that they would stay awake, right? But it's the result of not being able to take rest. Maybe they weren't able to. Maybe they just didn't do it. But it is the result of not resting, not scheduling rest when you can. You know, you will find yourself being so tired if you don't do that. That's why it's so important to even do it if it might not seem possible, to schedule in that rest. And it's really key that you listen to your own body in that. You know, I don't want anybody here to say to another person that they are lazy because they're taking a nap. Don't let anybody say that to you. Because I know I will be getting in mine later on today when I go home in the afternoon. You know, I don't care if you say that I'm lazy. But I know I'm doing it because I'm coming back here tonight with the youth, and I don't want to fall asleep during the service, you know, and I want to fall asleep there. And I want to be able to be clear in my mind, to be able well rested, so I can be of help, so I can be of a good input for those kids, you know. I don't want to be there and my body thinking of nothing else but getting some shut-eye. You know, so I know that I need that rest in between to be able to be well rested later on. We all had those moments when we couldn't keep our eyes open in the service, right, during the sermon, right? Some of you don't want to be honest. We can be honest. It's okay. Some of you were falling asleep right now. It's okay. You don't have to look at me with your eyes all open. Oh, I wasn't falling asleep. Not me. It's okay. I understand. You know, sometimes life just take over and we can't get the rest that we want to get. Sometimes we're just so busy doing things that we like to do that we don't even realize that we didn't get the rest that we needed. You know, but we don't want to get into that situation where somebody needs us and we can't help them because we are not well rested. That our body just says, "Man, I just can't do what you ask of me right now." Let's take a look at Matthew 14. And we go to verse 13 and 14. And this is the part where Jesus just heard the news from that John the Baptizer was killed and he was beheaded, which is really disturbing news, right? And even in that time where a lot of those things happened, but it's disturbing news to hear that, especially if it's a relative of yours. And that was the case with Jesus. So let's see how he responded to that. Now, when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. So Jesus was trying to get alone time with God. Maybe to seek some comfort. Maybe to seek some guidance in the situation that he was in. But the crowd wouldn't let him get that time with God. They followed him and they demanded his time. And with good reasons. It's not that we judge them. They had good reasons to go to Jesus, because it says that Jesus had compassion on them and he healed them sickness. So there was a good need there. But still, Jesus wasn't able to get the time alone that he wanted to get. But Jesus decided that he will attend those people, not get that rest right now, attend the people, even though the disciples told him that they wanted to get rid of the crowd. He said to them, don't do that. Let them be here, and instead just feed them. And if we look at the others, the verses after this, it looks like it's a great maneuver, like a distraction maneuver from Jesus to get away from them. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that Jesus had that intention when he said that. But he was able to get away after that. In verse 22 it says, immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. Once again, we see that Jesus leaves the crowd with work still to be done to take care of what is important. He knows he needed to connect to his Father. Maybe he needed some mental rest. Whatever the reason is that he needed that time with the Father, he tried earlier, but wasn't able to. But he didn't let too much time go over to get that rest, to get that time with the Father after all. He doesn't rush around to fix everything, in a hurry, being around the people in a hurry to fix them. He could have just snapped his finger and everything would be fixed, right? Because he is God, right? But he was also human. And he needed to spend some time with God when difficult things happened. And this brings me to my first takeaway. And that is add intentional time with God. In Matthew 26, the chapter that we already spoke about earlier, we are not going to read this because of the time, but it says here that, that Jesus went to Gethsemane with the disciples, and, he asked them to stay awake with him because he's just filled with sorrow. And he wants to go to pray with the Father. He wants to spend time with the Father. But he wants them to back him up in prayer and stay away with him. And he goes away to the Father for the first time. And when he gets back, the disciples are asleep. And he shares with them his disappointment in his own words. But he's a little bit disappointed. He's like, you can't stay awake, just for one moment with me. And he leaves them again. Goes to pray the same prayer that he prayed before, and that is for God to take away the cup that he had to drink. The cup of going through the offer that he had to make. He asked God to take it away, but that God's will be done. And then he goes back to the disciples again, and again, they are asleep. He goes away from the disciples a third time to pray the exact same prayer. For God to take away the cup, but his will be done. And when he gets back to the disciples, he's like, hey, you know what? Don't even bother. don't worry about it this time, because the time is here, and they came to take Jesus away. Jesus had intentional time with God. And a lot of times we call this time quiet time, right? I read a few weeks ago, I read that some lady called it her unhurried time with God, which I like the sound of that. Unhurried time with God. And that is what I see when Jesus goes to God here. Because even though his time had come and was close by for him to be taken away, he goes to God 3 times. And in between, he goes back to the disciples. But going to God for 3 times with the same prayer, it shows me that he took his time to hear from God. You know, I can't imagine Jesus not hearing from God or not knowing what God is thinking, because they are one, right? So he knows what God is thinking. He knows what God is going to say. And God knows what Jesus is going to ask. But still they communicate with each other like they don't. I like that about this. I like that what that shows us. Because it shows that the relationship is really important. It shows that even though God may know exactly what you are going to ask, he values that time with us. And that is what it shows me here, that Jesus and God, they valued that time that they can be together. And Jesus shows us that we can find rest in God, even though the answer is not what we want to hear. The second takeaway that I have is add intentional time with others. We have to be intentional about connecting with others. You know, including our spouse, our children, our friends, our family. I would like to think that this has changed for me since lockdown number 1, that I've been a lot better in this. But sometimes I catch myself that, you know, it's still not where it should be. Not all the times. You know, I can get really busy with work, even though I can work from home a lot of times. And even though it's work from God, for God maybe, I can still get so busy that it's easy to not make that time with my family. And so I have to be intentional with that time. And one of the things that helped me to do that is a table. Is making sure that we do this on the Fridays at a set time, at least. And a lot of times we try to do this on the Friday. Sometimes it happens on a Saturday. But the kids know that Friday and Saturday is theirs. It's their time. They know that we are going to spend time with them. And when I say that, I mean that we are going to try to do it. Because sometimes it doesn't happen. Sometimes it just doesn't fit into the schedule. But we try to make time for it as much as we can. But there's also another way to connect with others, you know. Sharing a meal with somebody is a way to connect with others. You know, we find it also at the table that when we connect with them by sharing a meal, that the people that you don't know, you get to know real quick. And you get a good bond with them, right, Joe? I mean, the food kitchen last time, you know, people bonding there. It's great when there's food. It helps to connect, right? But there's also different ways. There's a lot of different ways. I started playing basketball with a group of guys about a month ago. And I didn't know the majority of these guys. And I've played basketball when I was way younger. You know, I played baseball, but it was different, you know, a different type of cardio. And yeah, that was a reality check for me. Because I couldn't even play 5 minutes, and I was exhausted. I mean, I was like, hands on my knees, you know, like this, pain in my side and everything. You know, I was like, man, not even 5 minutes into this, and I'm exhausted. You know, I was really tired. But even though I was exhausted physically, I was still energized afterwards. because I found that mentally I was resting. I wasn't thinking about my bills getting paid. I wasn't thinking about the problems that I had to solve. I wasn't thinking about the people that I had to attend to. All of these things, I found rest mentally because I was doing something that I loved. And connecting with those guys, it was awesome and is awesome. So the building up the relationship with them is giving me rest. And I found out that that's the key, that's the same thing for those other guys as well. The main reason that we come together and we play basketball is not really to play basketball. Yes, it's good, it's fun, to do something and active. But the main reason is that we can connect with each other afterwards or during the games. And we talk about life and we talk about faith, even though most of them are not even believers. So we connect with each other, and that gives us rest, and that gives us energy, and it's just awesome to do. So connect with others by doing something that you love, and it will give you rest, and it will give you energy. I'm going to throw in a bonus takeaway, because we don't get this from the scriptures, but I know it's very important, so I'm going to share it with you anyway. And the last one is add intentional time with yourself. This is one that we forget to do sometimes. But it's really important. How many of you know Simone Biles? She's an American Olympic gymnast who at the last Olympics, where she was expected to get a lot of gold medals, decided that she was not going to participate anymore. She was already there. She was already at the games. And she said she's not going to participate. Now, a lot of people that didn't understand that decision, didn't, couldn't just place themselves in her position. They couldn't understand it. They were angry at her. And they called her a quitter. And they called her all kinds of things. Like really a lot of people around the world said all of these bad things towards her for making the decision. Let me tell you one thing. If an athlete trains 4 years to get to a certain place, to this tournament, to this competition, that is the greatest competition in their sports, they are not going to throw it away just in a blink of an eye. So there's something else that happened there for her to make that decision. We as humans, we can only give so much. We may have the best intentions to help maybe people to meet other people's expectations, so we help them, we don't want to disappoint them. But we can only do so much. Not saying that we need rest is not going to help anybody in the long run. Eventually, you will end up in a very difficult place where it's no longer seems to be able to get into that rhythm and where stress is lurking around the corner. And stress is an uncontrolled emotion. It's the feeling of being overwhelmed or unable to cope with mental or emotional pressure. We can all feel overwhelmed sometimes. But when we are rested, we don't have to feel stressed about it. We can actually convert that feeling into energy and into focus. And this is something that athletes are trained to do. For most of the times, they are able to transform and convert this emotion into energy and into focus. They train their minds and their bodies to perform at the highest stages and to be able to do what they want to do, to be able to accomplish those things. And this training also includes making time with yourself. There should be like moments, at least a few times a week, where you have time for yourself. For me, going to the gym or playing guitar is time with myself. And it's time where I rest and where I can, just be myself and just talk about things that I want to talk about in my mind. You go through several things, but it's also time that you get rid of some thoughts. It's really time to recover for me. Maybe you can read a book. Maybe that's your thing. Or maybe you like to get massages. Maybe that's your thing. But that could be pretty expensive if you do that several times a week, right? But you know what I mean. Like, whatever you feel like that is really your thing to do that. Just make time for yourself. Even if it's like a half hour. If you do that several times a week, it helps. It helps to get your rest. Simone said that she wasn't giving up. She said that she simply couldn't continue. Due to various circumstances in her life that caused prolonged stress and therefore no rest and peace, her body and her mind no longer work together. And this could be very dangerous if you're a gymnast. I mean, just all the twirling around and trying to land at a certain place, doing all these things. It takes a lot of focus, and you have to be in sync with your mind. Your mind has to tell your body to do something, and it has to react right away. So not being able to do that is very dangerous for her. She couldn't even do the simplest landing. She couldn't even land it. And it was because she had so much mental stress. She was exhausted mentally. She couldn't do it. So it wasn't her quitting. It was her just simply not being able to do it. And this is what happens, if we don't rest. And this is where rest or time with yourself can really help. And you know what? You are worth that rest. So you really have to take care of yourself. Really try to listen to yourself. If you are in need of that rest, take it. Don't worry about the expectations of other people. Don't worry about the way they are going to look at you. Know that you need that rest and you're worth that rest. We will close up with this final thought as the worship team comes up. For the title of today, I chose Rest is Peace. And this really sums it up for me, all the things that we have talked about. Because to find rest in God, to find rest in others, to find rest in yourself, we must have peace. That peace, that shalom, only God can give us. And when we rest, we acknowledge that. The reason that Jesus could sleep in the boat filled with water and the storm raging on outside, around him, is because he was at peace. He had that faith in God and knew that he was in control. When we rest, we let God know that we trust him. We let God know that we have faith in him, that we don't need to do everything ourselves, that we don't have to fix everything ourselves, but we trust him to fix it. Is our trust in God great enough that we dare to take rest? That's a question I'm just going to drop with you guys and that you can think about. Is our trust in God great enough that we dare to rest? As we go to worship again in just a couple minutes, the altar here is open for you guys, for everybody here, me included, to come here and just have that time with God. And we as leaders and team members. We'll be behind everybody that's here in prayer. We'll stay awake. We won't fall asleep, promise. But it's your time with God. If you'd rather go to the sides and have your time there with God, do that. But don't let this moment pass that we can connect with our Father. Don't let this moment pass if you really need it, if you need that rest, to take it right now. Don't wait. Let us take that time with God and get that rest in Him. Amen.